What if the single greatest threat to everything you've built isn't the enemy at your gates, but the one you invite into your home, the one you mentor and trust? It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? We're raised to believe that danger comes from the outside, from shadowy figures and declared rivals. But I'm here to tell you that the most devastating wounds, the most catastrophic betrayals, almost always come with a familiar smile. This is a story that proves a controversial truth sometimes. The person hired to protect you is the only one who can see the real monster, especially when that monster is part of the family. In one corner, we have Maria Peterson. She is the very definition of a brilliant, self-made woman who built a global corporate empire from the ground up. She lives in a world of glass towers and billion-dollar deals, commanding respect and admiration from everyone. In the other corner, there's Timothy Gibson, a quiet, watchful man who lives in a world of shadows and instincts. As an elite bodyguard, his currency isn't money, it's loyalty, and his greatest skill is seeing the threat no one else can. Their worlds were never meant to collide, until Maria makes a decision that will change both of their lives forever. The central conflict ignites when she hires Timothy for her personal protection, believing the danger is external. But what Timothy immediately senses is that the real mission is to save her empire, and the betrayal comes from the billionaire's own charismatic, charming young man that Maria has taken under her wing. She sees a protege bodyguard, however, is on watch, seeing a predator in disguise, a snake she has welcomed into her garden. This sets the stage for a silent, emotional war fought in the corridors of power, a battle of wits between a protector with no proof and a traitor with the perfect cover. This isn't just a story about corporate espionage, it's a heart-aching narrative about trust, deception, and the surprising places we find our staunchest allies. It's a story that will make you question everything you think you know about judging character, and will give you the immense satisfaction of seeing justice served. We're about to dive into a world of secrets, a hidden love story, and a plot twist so perfectly executed, it will leave you breathless. So before we begin this incredible journey, I want to connect with all of you. Let us know in the comments what beautiful city or town you're watching from right now, so we can see how far our story has reached. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you're ready for the drama, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. And please, share this video with someone you know who loves a story that truly touches the soul. You know, there are some people who can just sense things. It's like they have a built-in radar for trouble, a gut feeling that screams when something's off. Timothy Gibson was one of those people. His entire life was built on observation, on seeing the things that others missed. As a top-tier bodyguard, his job wasn't just to stop a bullet, but to see it coming long before the trigger was ever pulled. His unwavering loyalty was his trademark, a silent promise to protect, no matter the cost. His latest assignment was a behemoth, a corporate empire, that touched nearly every corner of the globe. It was a world of shimmering glass towers and cutthroat deals, a place where a single whisper could make or break fortunes. Timothy wasn't there to protect the money, though. He was there to protect the people who built it, the minds behind the machine. And from his vantage point, a storm was gathering, a devastating betrayal brewing in the heart of it all. It was the kind of deception that could bring everything crashing down. The architect of this impending doom? Well, that was the real kicker. It wasn't some shadowy rival or a corporate spy. No, the threat was coming from within, from the smiling, charismatic son of a powerful billionaire associate. The kid had it all: the looks, the charm, the pedigree. He was the golden boy, the heir apparent, and everyone was completely snowed by his act. Everyone, that is, except for the quiet man in the tailored suit, standing in the corner of the room. Timothy saw a secret darkness in his eyes. It's a funny thing about trust. People give it away so freely, especially to those who seem to have earned it by birthright. The billionaire's son played his part to perfection, oozing confidence and ambition. He spoke of legacy, of honor, of taking the empire to new heights. But Timothy saw the subtle flickers of deceit, the carefully crafted lies behind the perfect smile. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this wasn't about building something up. It was about tearing it all down for a twisted sense of revenge. An emotional current ran beneath the surface of every boardroom meeting. Every handshake, Timothy felt it all. He was the only one who seemed to understand that the mission was no longer just about protection. It had become a desperate race to save the legacy of a family he hadn't even been formally hired to protect yet. The scale of the coming plot twist was staggering, a catastrophe waiting to happen. He felt the weight of this knowledge settle on his shoulders, a heavy burden of a truth no one else could see. He watched, he waited, and he planned. This wasn't just a job anymore, it was a matter of principle, a testament to his own code. The impending clash would be more than just business. It was destined to be a deeply personal, almost heart-aching battle of wills. Little did anyone know, the first move in this dangerous game was about to be made, not in a boardroom, but with a simple, unassuming job offer. The quiet bodyguard was about to be invited into the very center of the storm. And just like that, the call came. The name on the other end of the line belonged to Maria Peterson, a woman whose name was synonymous with power. She was the architect of the very empire Timothy had been observing from the shadows. Maria didn't get where she was by being easily impressed, but her sources were impeccable, and they all pointed to one man for the job. She needed someone who was more than muscle. She needed a shadow, a ghost, someone whose loyalty was absolute. She needed a bodyguard who could think. Her voice over the phone was calm, measured, but with an undercurrent of steel that commanded respect. She didn't waste time with pleasantries, getting straight to the point. She explained that with the company's growth, her profile had become dangerously public, and she needed to save herself from becoming a target. In a world built on risk, she was looking for certainty, for a shield she could trust. Timothy listened, his silence speaking volumes. He already knew the real threat wasn't from the outside. So he took the job. Stepping into Maria Peterson's world was like entering the eye of the hurricane. The pace was relentless, the stakes impossibly high. His one and only focus was her safety. It was a simple, clear-cut mission, or so it seemed on the surface. But Timothy carried the weight of his secret knowledge, understanding that the real danger wasn't a random threat, but a calculated betrayal that was already in motion, a fact that made his new role intensely emotional. Maria was a force of nature. Sharp, brilliant, and fiercely dedicated, she commanded every room she entered. She saw in Timothy a quiet professionalism that she admired. She believed she was hiring him to protect her from external enemies, the kind you can see coming. She had no idea that her new protector was already bracing for an internal war, a fight for the very soul of her company. This initial dynamic was a heart-aching display of professional respect. For Timothy, being this close to her was both a strategic advantage and an exercise in restraint. Every conversation, every shared glance was a test. He had to be the silent guardian, the watchful protector, while a monstrous deception was unfolding right under her nose. He was now the last line of defense for a woman who didn't even know she was in a battle for her life's work. It was a heavy burden to bear. He settled into his role, a silent sentinel in a world of opulence and power. His presence was a quiet hum in the background of Maria's high-stakes life. He was patient, knowing that the source of the rot would soon reveal itself. And oh boy, he wouldn't have to wait long. The very next move in this dangerous chess game was about to be made by a trusted friend, bringing the snake right to her front door. It happened on a Tuesday. Maria's most trusted business partner, a charismatic billionaire she had known for decades, came to her with a proposition. His son, he explained, was ready. ready to step into the world of high finance and corporate strategy. He painted a picture of a brilliant young man, eager to learn, a perfect protege for a woman like Maria. He asked her, as a personal favor, to take the young man under her wing and mentor him for a future leadership role in the empire. Maria, a woman who valued loyalty above all else, saw no reason to refuse. Her partner had been with her through thick and thin. Their bond was foundational to her success. Of course, she would help his son. It felt like the natural continuation of a fruitful partnership, a way to cement their families' legacies together. She agreed without a second thought, her decision rooted in years of unwavering trust. She couldn't possibly fathom the deception that was being served to her with a fatherly smile. And so, the architect of ruin walked through the front doors of the corporate headquarters, not as an enemy, but as a welcome guest. The son was everything his father had promised: charming, intelligent, and incredibly smooth. He dazzled the board members and charmed the staff. He looked at Maria with a reverence that was expertly faked, pledging his allegiance to her vision. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, a masterclass in manipulation, and it was devastatingly effective on everyone. From his post by the door, Timothy Gibson watched the scene unfold with a cold dread settling in his stomach. He recognized the young man instantly. This was the source of the betrayal he had sensed, the face of the coming storm. Now he had a name, and even worse, he had direct access to the very person Timothy was sworn to protect. The mission to save her had just become infinitely more complicated and emotional. This right here was a new, unexpected plot twist. The enemy wasn't just at the gates, he had been personally invited inside and given a seat at the royal table. Timothy knew that this mentorship was a Trojan horse, a beautifully packaged gift designed to destroy Maria's world from the inside out. He had to find a way to make her see the truth. But how do you expose a secret enemy that everyone else sees as a friend? He observed their first interaction, Maria's warm, encouraging smile and the son's feigned humility. It was a picture of corporate harmony, of a bright future being forged. But Timothy saw the truth beneath the surface, the subtle predator sizing up its prey. He knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the beginning of the end unless he could intervene. The game had truly begun, and the first moves were already being made in plain sight. Timothy's instincts, honed by years in the field, went into overdrive. He wasn't just a bodyguard, he was a human lie detector, and every alarm bell in his head was ringing. He began to shadow the son, not just physically, but digitally, as much as his access would allow. He was a ghost, melting into the background, his eyes and ears missing nothing. And what he started to see confirmed his deepest fears. The kid was a phantom, skilled in the art of the secret. He saw the son taking hushed, intense phone calls in secluded stairwells, his charming demeanor melting away to reveal a cold, calculating anger. The conversations were always brief, cryptic, and ended the moment someone else appeared. Then, in meetings, Timothy noticed the subtle sabotage. The son would praise Maria's ideas to her face, only to later plant seeds of doubt with key executives, framing his comments as innocent questions or playing devil's advocate. It was a brilliant, insidious deception. This wasn't just ambition, it was a quiet coup. The son was methodically undermining Maria Peterson's authority, chipping away at the foundation of trust she had built over decades. He was positioning himself as the reasonable, forward-thinking alternative to her supposedly outdated methods. He was a snake in the grass, and his venom was a slow-acting poison designed to paralyze the entire empire before the final strike. The sheer audacity of the betrayal was breathtaking. Timothy's loyalty to Maria was absolute, which made his position incredibly difficult. He was gathering intel, fragments of a puzzle that painted a terrifying picture. He knew he had to save her from this, but his evidence was circumstantial. It was a gut feeling backed by whispers and glances, not hard proof. It was the kind of thing a person in Maria's position of power, who dealt in facts and figures, would find hard to believe. It was an emotional tightrope walk. The situation was a ticking time bomb. With every passing day, the son's influence grew, his roots digging deeper into the company's structure. He was an artist of manipulation, and Maria was his unsuspecting canvas. The impending surprise would be a devastating masterpiece of corporate destruction. Timothy felt like a man shouting a warning behind soundproof glass, his voice unheard, his gestures unseen. He had to break through that glass, and soon. He watched one afternoon as the son accidentally spilled coffee on a crucial project file right before a major presentation, only to heroically produce a backup that subtly altered the data to his own advantage. It was a small act, easily dismissed as a clumsy mistake, but Timothy saw it for what it was: a rehearsal, a test to see what he could get away with. And he was getting away with all of it. The moment came when Timothy couldn't stay silent any longer. He found a quiet moment, approaching Maria in her penthouse office after a particularly tense day. He chose his words carefully, trying to convey the gravity of his concerns without sounding like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. He spoke of the secretive calls, the subtle undermining, the feeling that they were all being played. He laid out his suspicions about the billionaire's son, hoping she would see the pattern. But Maria's reaction was not what he had hoped for. She listened, yes, but with a look of weary patience, not alarm. From her perspective, what Timothy was describing sounded like the typical ambition of a young man trying to make his mark. She saw a young, hungry executive, not a saboteur. She dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand, attributing them to his overprotective nature. "Timothy," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you're paid to see threats everywhere. It's your job. But you can't see a ghost in every shadow." She believed his judgment was clouded, that he was unable to see past the son's status as a billionaire's heir, perhaps mistaking privilege for malice. She valued his loyalty, she assured him, but in this case, he was wrong. She had known the boy's father for years. Her trust in that family was ironclad. To her, this was a simple case of a bodyguard, overstepping his bounds, his protective instincts creating a fiction, a dramatic but ultimately baseless plot twist. The conversation left a chasm between them. For Timothy, it was a moment of profound frustration and isolation. The one person he was trying to save refused to see the danger she was in. He had presented the truth as he saw it, and it had been rejected. This dismissal was its own kind of betrayal, a small cut that stung more than he expected. He was left holding a terrible secret, now completely alone. The emotional weight of his mission doubled in that moment. He retreated back into his silent, watchful role, but with a new, grim determination. If Maria wouldn't listen to his words, he would have to find a way to show her undeniable proof. He knew the son's deception would continue, and he would be there to document it. He had to be her eyes and ears, even if she didn't want him to be. His duty hadn't changed, only the method. He had to protect her from her own blind spots. He felt the gap between them widen in the following days. There was a new formality, a slight distance that hadn't been there before. Maria was still his boss, and he was still her protector, but the easy rapport they had started to build was gone. She thought he was being overzealous. He knew he was the only thing standing between her and the destruction of her empire. The stage was set for a rude awakening, but it would have to be something so shocking it couldn't be ignored. The corporate gala was the social event of the season, a glittering affair where the titans of industry gathered to celebrate success. Maria Peterson was the star of the show, radiant and confident as she moved through the crowd. Timothy, as always, was a few steps behind, a silent shadow in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. His eyes weren't on the champagne flutes or the dazzling jewelry. They were scanning every corner, every face, every exit. His instincts were screaming that tonight, something was going to happen. The billionaire's son was in his element, a whirlwind of charm and charisma. He made a point of staying close to Maria, playing the part of the devoted protege. At one point, he guided her toward a balcony overlooking the city, suggesting they get some fresh air. It was a seemingly innocent gesture, but Timothy's gut clenched. He saw the son subtly check his watch and glance towards a heavy, ornate chandelier hanging directly over the path to the balcony. It was a fleeting look, but it was enough. As Maria took a step forward, Timothy moved like lightning. "Ma'am, a moment," he said, his voice low but urgent, as he accidentally stumbled into her path, knocking a drink from a passing waiter's tray and creating a momentary messy diversion. Just as Maria stopped to address the commotion, a sharp crack echoed from above. The massive chandelier shuddered, then plunged to the marble floor, shattering in the exact spot where she would have been standing. A staged accident, averted by a whisper and a manufactured stumble. The aftermath was house gasps, screams, security rushing in. But in the sudden quiet bubble around them, Maria looked at Timothy. She saw past the spilled drink and the quick apology. She saw the truth in his eyes, the sharp, focused intensity that had just saved her life. This was no surprise, it was an attempt on her life. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The professional barrier between them evaporated, replaced by a raw, emotional connection. She saw the genuine, heart-aching care behind his rigid professionalism. This was the plot twist she couldn't dismiss. In that moment of stark terror, she understood. His warnings hadn't been paranoia. The threat was real. Her trust in her own judgment was shaken, but a new, more powerful trust was beginning to form. Trust in the quiet man who had just put himself between her and death. The calculated betrayal she had refused to believe in was no longer a theory. It was a terrifying reality, and this was only the beginning. Later that night, long after the guests had departed and the broken glass had been swept away, Maria sat in her study, the silence deafening. The son had, of course, been the first to express his shock and relief, his performance of concern flawless. But she now saw the deception in his eyes. She finally understood that her loyal bodyguard was fighting a war she hadn't even known existed, a war to save her and her empire. And she realized with a chilling certainty that he was the only person she could truly count on. With the accident having failed to remove Maria, the son shifted tactics. He knew he couldn't risk another overt attempt so soon. Instead, he turned his attention to dismantling her empire from within, targeting a critical project that was the cornerstone of her company's future expansion. This was a new level of deception, more subtle and far more damaging than a falling chandelier. It was a quiet, systematic sabotage designed to cripple her financially and ruin her reputation. He began by feeding a rival company just enough inside information to undercut Maria's bids on key contracts. He masterfully manipulated internal reports, making it look like her own team was incompetent and that the rival was simply outmaneuvering them with superior strategy. He was a ghost in the machine, altering data, deleting crucial emails, and rerouting communications. To Maria and the board, it looked like they were being bled dry by a competitor who was always one step ahead. The genius of his plan was in its execution. He was so effective at shifting the blame that he actually earned Maria's trust even further. He would discover the rival's moves just a little too late, presenting his findings with a feigned frustration that mirrored her own. He became her confidant in the crisis, the one person who seemed to understand the scale of the attack. He was whispering advice in her ear, all while secretly orchestrating the downfall he was pretending to fight. Timothy watched this masterful betrayal unfold with a sense of grim admiration for its cruelty. He saw the digital breadcrumbs, the traces of the son's interference, but they were so well hidden, so cleverly disguised, that they were almost impossible to present as concrete proof. He was fighting a war of shadows, trying to save a woman who was now leaning on her enemy for support. The situation was deeply emotional, a constant, silent battle of wills. His loyalty was being tested in a way he had never imagined. Protecting a life was one thing, protecting a legacy from an invisible enemy was another. He knew this sabotage was the son's true passion project, his ultimate act of revenge against a woman he envied. Every success for the rival company was a knife twisted in Maria's back, and the son was holding the handle, smiling and offering her a bandage, a truly diabolical plot twist. He knew he had to expose this secret war. The company was bleeding, and Maria's confidence was starting to crack under the relentless pressure. She was fighting a phantom, and her trusted ally was the one supplying the ghosts. Timothy realized that the son's next logical move would be to eliminate the only person who saw through his act, him. He was the last obstacle, the final piece that needed to be removed from the board. Just as Timothy predicted, the son made his move. He knew the quiet bodyguard was the only one who didn't buy his act, the only one whose watchful eyes missed nothing. To complete his hostile takeover, he had to remove the final bastion of loyalty standing by Maria's side. So he devised a plan that was as cunning as it was cruel, a masterstroke of deception designed not just to fire Timothy, but to utterly destroy his credibility and shatter Maria's faith in him. He orchestrated a leak, a highly sensitive file containing details of a future Murgera project Maria had kept intensely secret was anonymously sent to a financial news blogger. The leak caused an immediate firestorm, tanking the company's stock and jeopardizing the entire deal. The damage was catastrophic, and the search for the mole began instantly. The son, of course, was the one who led the investigation, his face a mask of grave concern. And then, the evidence surfaced, planted with surgical precision. A trail of digital breadcrumbs, expertly forged, led directly to Timothy Gibson's personal accounts. It looked like he had accepted a massive payout from a shell corporation linked to their biggest rival. It was the perfect frame-up, a narrative of greed and betrayal that was simple, believable, and devastatingly effective. The loyal protector was recast as a common traitor, selling out the woman he was sworn to protect. When Maria saw the proof, her world tilted on its axis. The man who had saved her life, the one person she had just begun to place her absolute trust in, was now implicated in the worst possible way. The evidence was presented by the son, his expression a heart-aching blend of sorrow and resolve. He made it seem as though it pained him to reveal this truth about a man she valued. It was the ultimate plot twist, and it worked perfectly. This act created a deep, painful rift between Maria and her protector. The emotional shock was immense. She felt foolish, naive, and profoundly hurt. How could she have been so wrong about someone? The trust that had been forged in the crucible of a near-death experience was now poisoned. The son had not just removed his obstacle, he had isolated Maria completely, leaving her vulnerable and surrounded only by his influence. He had managed to save his own sinister plan by sacrificing her guardian. This wasn't just about business. Anymore, it was personal. It was a calculated move to break her spirit, to make her feel utterly alone in her own empire. And as Maria stared at the damning report on her desk, the feeling of betrayal was so overwhelming that it was hard to breathe. The stage was set for a confrontation she never could have imagined. The confrontation happened in the same office, where she had once dismissed his warnings. But this time, the air was thick with accusation and hurt. Maria Peterson, her face etched with a pain that went far beyond business losses, slid the file across her mahogany desk. "Explain this," she said, her voice barely a whisper but carrying the weight of a death sentence. Her eyes, which had once held respect and burgeoning warmth, were now filled with the ice of betrayal. Timothy looked at the fabricated evidence, at the intricate web of lies that had been woven to ensnare him. He felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly overshadowed by a profound sadness for her. He saw not just a boss accusing an employee, but a woman whose trust had been weaponized against her. "It's not true," he stated, his voice calm and steady, a rock in her sea of emotional turmoil. "I didn't do this. You're being played." He firmly maintained his innocence, but he had no proof. How do you prove a negative? How do you fight a phantom who has mastered the art of deception? He could see the conflict in her eyes, the desperate desire to believe him warring with the cold, hard facts in front of her. His words of loyalty were just that, words, weightless against the mountain of manufactured evidence. He was trapped, and they both knew it. Feeling profoundly hurt by the person she had trusted with her very life, Maria made the only decision she felt she could. His denials, without proof, sounded hollow, like the desperate pleas of a guilty man. "I can't have you here," she said, the words costing her more than he could ever know. "You're suspended, pending a full investigation." It wasn't just a termination of employment, it was a severing of a connection that had become deeply important to them both. This was the son's ultimate victory, his moment of sweet revenge. He had not only framed his enemy, but had forced Maria to be the one to cast him out. It was a cruel surprise, leaving Timothy stripped of his position, his honor, and his ability to protect her. He had failed in his mission to save her, cast aside by the very person he was trying to shield. It was a checkmate move in a game she didn't even know she was losing. As Timothy walked out of the towering headquarters of her empire, he wasn't defeated, he was determined. He knew this was not the end. Being officially removed from his post didn't sever his duty, it simply changed the rules of engagement. He was now on the outside, but for the first time, he was free to operate without constraints. He would launch his own secret investigation, and he would find the proof to clear his name and expose the truth, no matter the cost. Suspended and discredited, Timothy Gibson didn't wallow in self-pity or anger. Instead, a cold, clear purpose settled over him. He was a man convinced of a deeper conspiracy, a vast and intricate deception that went far beyond a simple corporate frame-up. Stripped of his official credentials, he fell back on the skills that had made him one of the best in the business. He would use his security expertise to launch his own secret investigation, operating in the shadows he knew so well. He became a ghost. He traded his tailored suits for unassuming street clothes, blending into the city's anonymous crowds. His apartment transformed into a command center, its walls covered in maps, photos, and connection charts. He was hunting a snake, and he knew that to catch it, he had to understand its every move. His target was the billionaire's son, and Timothy was now a predator on the trail, fueled by a need for justice and a fierce, unwavering loyalty to Maria. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. This was about revenge, not a petty, emotional outburst, but a cold, calculated dismantling of the man who had orchestrated this betrayal. He used his network of old contacts, calling in favors from people who operated in the gray areas of the law. He started tracking the son's digital footprint, his financial transactions, his private meetings. He was building a case, piece by painstaking piece from the outside in. The investigation was a lonely, dangerous game. Every step was a risk, every uncovered clue a small victory in a silent war. He was a lone bodyguard trying to take down a powerful figure who had an entire corporate empire at his fingertips. The irony was not lost on him. He was fighting to save the very company that had cast him out, driven by a conviction that Maria Peterson's trust was worth fighting for, even if she herself had lost it in him. It was an emotional and grueling process. He'd spend nights watching the son's luxury apartment from a parked car across the street, running on caffeine and pure determination. He was looking for a mistake, a slip-up, a single thread that he could pull to unravel the entire conspiracy. The pressure was immense, but it sharpened his focus. He knew he was in a race against time, as the sun would undoubtedly be accelerating his plans now that the final obstacle was gone. He knew a major plot twist was coming, the final act of the sun's grand plan. Timothy couldn't be there to physically protect Maria anymore, but he could arm her with the one weapon that could defeat an enemy like this, the truth. And as he dug deeper, he started to find anomalies, faint whispers in the digital ether that suggested a conspiracy far bigger and more shocking than he had ever imagined. The hunt was on. While protecting Maria from a distance, a profound change began to occur within Timothy. His mission, which had started as a professional duty, bound by a code of loyalty, slowly transformed into something far more personal. Her through a telephoto lens, seeing the strain and isolation on her face as she navigated the betrayal alone, stirred something deep inside him. The professional duty to save her began to blur with a genuine, desperate need to see her safe and happy. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was a bodyguard, a protector. His feelings were supposed to be locked down, compartmentalized. But seeing her vulnerability, her strength in the face of a deception she couldn't fully comprehend, broke through his defenses. His feelings for Maria Peterson deepened from a sense of responsibility into a quiet, profound love. It was a secret he kept locked in his own heart, a truth even more guarded than the investigation he was running. This unexpected love story, unfolding in the shadows, became the fuel for his determination. It was no longer just about justice or clearing his name. It was about saving the woman he loved from having her life's work, her entire empire, stolen by a sociopath. Every late night, every dead end in his investigation, was pushed through by the image of her smile, a smile he hadn't seen in weeks. This emotional, heart-aching connection gave his quest a new, unshakable power. He imagined the moment he could finally bring her the truth. The moment he could restore her trust, not just in him, but in the idea that good people still existed. This hope was a beacon in the darkness of his solitary mission. He knew the sun's plan for revenge was nearing its climax, and the thought of Maria facing that final plot twist alone was unbearable. He had to get to her first. He had to be her champion, even from the outside. His feelings gave him a new perspective. He wasn't just analyzing data, he was trying to anticipate the moves of a man trying to hurt someone he cared for. It made him sharper, more relentless. He started to think not just about the business, but about the emotional impact of the son's actions on Maria. The billionaire's son wasn't just attacking a company, he was attacking a woman's soul. And Timothy took that personally. He felt a strange sense of hope amidst the danger. What started as a job had become the most important chapter of his life. He was a man with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. This secret love was his greatest strength and his greatest vulnerability. It drove him forward, pushing him to unravel the conspiracy before the final curtain fell on Maria Peterson and the empire she had poured her life into building. And then he found it. After weeks of relentless digging, following ghost accounts and untraceable money transfers, Timothy hit the jackpot. It was a shocking money trail, a complex web of offshore corporations and back-channel payments that laid the entire conspiracy bare. It was the kind of discovery that changes everything, the key that unlocks the whole twisted scheme. The evidence was undeniable, a digital smoking gun that pointed directly at the billionaire's son. The trail proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that the son was colluding with Maria's fiercest competitors. But it was worse than simple corporate espionage. His plan wasn't just to weaken her empire, it was to bankrupt it completely. He was systematically devaluing the company, orchestrating its demise so that he and his secret partners could swoop in and buy the wreckage for pennies on the dollar. It was the ultimate betrayal, a plan born of pure greed and a twisted need for revenge. The sheer scale of the deception was breathtaking. The son had been playing a long game, manipulating markets, leaking information, and sabotaging deals for months, all while playing the role of the loyal protégé. He had weaponized Maria's trust against her in the most profound way imaginable. This wasn't just an attack, it was a complete annihilation, planned with cold, sociopathic precision. The secret was out, and it was uglier than Timothy could have ever imagined. This was the proof he needed. The evidence was a complex puzzle, but he had all the pieces. He could now show Maria not just who betrayed her, but how and why. He could save her from the final devastating blow. The emotional relief he felt was quickly replaced by a surge of adrenaline. He now had the weapon, but he still had to get it to the general, who was trapped behind enemy lines. Time was running out. This discovery was the plot twist that would turn the tables. No longer was it his word against the Sun's. It was his proof against the Sun's lies. His own sense of loyalty felt vindicated. He had been right all along. This wasn't just about protecting the client anymore, it was about exposing the monster and preventing him from destroying the life of the woman he loved. This information was her salvation. He worked frantically, compiling the data into a clear, irrefutable report. Every piece of evidence was a nail in the Sun's coffin. As he pieced it all together, he realized the Sun's plan must be nearing its final stage. A hostile takeover of this magnitude would need a catalyst, a single event to trigger the final collapse. He had to figure out what that final move was, and he had to do it fast. With the money trail secured, Timothy's focus shifted to the final piece of the puzzle, the endgame. How would the Sun trigger the final collapse? What was the kill switch? He pushed his investigation into overdrive, knowing the annual board meeting was just days away. That had to be the venue. It was the perfect stage for a corporate execution. A public forum where the final act of revenge could be played out for maximum impact. He dug deeper into the Sun's recent activities and discovered the final brilliant move. The Sun had commissioned a neutral third-party audit of the company's performance, citing the recent financial troubles. But the firm he hired was secretly under his control. He was going to use a doctored report at the annual board meeting, a masterpiece of financial deception filled with falsified data and fabricated losses, to paint a picture of catastrophic failure under Maria's leadership. The goal was simple and brutal: to have the board lose all faith in her and vote to have her removed as CEO. With her gone, and the company's stock in freefall from the damning report, he and his partners could initiate their hostile takeover. It was the perfect corporate coup, a plot twist designed to be so sudden and overwhelming that Maria would have no time to react. He would seize control of her empire using nothing but a pack of well-presented lies. Timothy's heart pounded as he uncovered the plan. This was it. The final betrayal. The Sun wasn't just going to bankrupt her, he was going to humiliate her, using the very board she had assembled to cast her out. The sheer arrogance was stunning. He was so confident in his web of lies that he was willing to present them as fact in the most high-stakes meeting of the year. His secret weapon was a lie, and it was powerful enough to destroy everything. The urgency was palpable. The board meeting was in less than 48 hours. Timothy was a lone, discredited bodyguard holding a truth bomb, while the enemy was already inside the gates, preparing to detonate it. He had to get this evidence to Maria. He had to break through the wall of security and suspicion that now surrounded her. The mission to save her came down to this one final, desperate act. He knew that presenting this evidence would be the ultimate test of her trust. She would have to choose between the man she had cast out and the man she had embraced as a confidant. The entire future of her company, her legacy, rested on a single decision. The emotional weight of it all was immense, but Timothy felt a strange calm. He had the truth on his side. Now he just had to deliver it. It was the night before the board meeting. The clock was a ticking bomb, every second pushing Maria Peterson closer to the edge of a cliff she couldn't see. Timothy knew he couldn't just walk through the front door. He was a persona non grata. his face flagged in every security system in the building. Getting to Maria would require him to use every skill he had ever learned, not as a bodyguard, but as an infiltrator. He bypassed the state-authored security system of her corporate headquarters with the ease of a man who had designed similar systems himself. He moved through service corridors and ventilation shafts, a ghost in the machine of her own empire. This wasn't about force, it was about precision, about knowing the building's secret pathways better than the people who guarded it. His mission was singular: present Maria with the undeniable evidence of the Sun's treachery. He found her where he knew she would be, in her office, poring over the grim financial projections, looking for a way to save her company, unaware that the numbers themselves were the weapon being used against her. He emerged from the shadows of her private elevator, and for a moment, she looked at him with shock and fear, her hand reaching for the panic button. "Wait," he said, his voice calm, holding up the data drive. "You need to see this. The betrayal is not what you think." He laid it all out for her. The offshore accounts, the collusion with competitors, the doctored report prepared for the meeting. He didn't just give her data, he told her a story, the real story of the deception that had been playing out around her. He showed her the proof, irrefutable and damning. As she absorbed the information, he saw the dawning horror in her eyes, followed by a flicker of something else righteous, burning anger. This was the moment of truth, the ultimate plot twist. The man she had fired, the one she believed had betrayed her, had just risked everything to bring her the truth. The emotional wall between them crumbled, washed away by the tide of this new terrible reality. In that quiet office, surrounded by the glittering lights of the city, her world reordered itself. The foundation of lies she had been standing on disintegrated, replaced by a solid bedrock of fact. Faced with the undeniable truth of the Sun's treachery, Maria Peterson didn't hesitate. The last vestiges of doubt vanished. She looked at Timothy Gibson, seeing not just her protector, but her savior. Her trust in him was restored, now absolute and unbreakable. "He thinks he's going to take my company," she said, a dangerous fire in her eyes. "He's about to get a surprise." The game wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. With the truth laid bare between them, the dynamic in the room shifted. The helplessness Maria had felt for weeks was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She looked at Timothy, the man who had honored his loyalty even after she had cast him aside, and made a decision. She put her complete faith in Timothy Gibson. This was no longer her fight alone, it was theirs. Together, they would devise a plan to expose the betrayal on their own terms. The hours before the board meeting became a frantic, hushed strategy session. They were a two-person army against a conspiracy, fueled by adrenaline and a shared purpose. He had the what, the hard evidence of the deception. She had the how, the intimate knowledge of the boardroom, the players, and the politics. It was a perfect fusion of his tactical genius and her strategic brilliance. The billionaire's son thought he was walking into a coronation. He was actually walking into a trap. Their plan was audacious, risky, and theatrical. It was designed not just to stop the takeover, but to utterly dismantle the son's reputation and expose him in the most public and humiliating way possible. This wasn't just about business anymore, it was about justice. It was about taking back the narrative, turning the son's own weapons against him. It would be the ultimate revenge, served cold in a climate-controlled boardroom. It was a plan that required absolute trust between them. A deep, emotional bond was forged in that late-night plotting. They moved past the employer-bodyguard dynamic and became true partners. She saw the depth of his character, the quiet strength that had been working to save her all along. He saw the fierce warrior behind her polished corporate exterior. It was a heart-aching realization for both of them that their connection went far beyond a professional contract. A silent, unspoken love story was cementing itself in the crucible of this crisis. They prepared their counterattack with meticulous detail. Every document was cross-referenced, every piece of Timothy's evidence integrated into Maria's presentation. They anticipated the son's every move, his every argument. They were choreographing a boardroom battle that would be remembered for decades. A masterclass in turning the tables. The impending surprise would be one for the corporate history books, a legendary plot twist. As dawn broke over the city, they were ready. Maria Peterson would walk into that meeting appearing defeated, vulnerable, and alone. She would let the sun make his case, build his pyre, and light the match. And just when he believed he had won, when he was about to seize her empire, she and her loyal protector would turn his fire into an inferno that would consume him completely. The boardroom was a lion's den, the air thick with tension. Maria Peterson sat at the head of the table, her expression a perfect mask of weary resignation. Timothy Gibson was nowhere to be seen, seemingly absent from the final act. The billionaire's son, oozing a predatory confidence, stood to address the board. He launched into his speech, his voice ringing with false sympathy as he detailed the company's failures and presented his doctored report. It was a masterful performance of deception. He spoke of the need for a change in leadership, for a new vision to save the empire from ruin. He painted Maria as a relic of the past, unable to cope with the modern market. Then, with a final dramatic flourish, he called for a vote of no confidence to have her removed as CEO. He looked at her, a flicker of triumphant revenge in his eyes. He believed he had won. The betrayal was complete. But then, something unexpected happened. Maria smiled. "An impressive presentation," she said, her voice suddenly clear and strong, sending a ripple of surprise through the room. "Theatrics lies, and a complete work of fiction, but impressive nonetheless." The son's smug expression faltered. "Now," Maria continued, "let me show you the truth." The boardroom's main screen, which had just shown his fabricated data, flickered to life. And there it was. Timothy's evidence, presented with Maria's sharp, undeniable clarity. The offshore accounts, the secret deals with competitors, the money trail that proved the son's plot to bankrupt the company. It was a breathtaking plot twist. As the board watched in stunned silence, Maria turned the tables, narrating the entire conspiracy. She didn't just defend herself, she prosecuted him, revealing his plot to the very people he thought he had fooled. Just as the son began to stammer, to deny everything, the doors to the boardroom opened, and in walked Timothy Gibson, flanked by legal counsel and federal agents. But trap had been sprung. In that tense boardroom showdown, Maria Peterson saved her empire, exposing the treachery with her loyal bodyguard's evidence. The look on the son's face, a cocktail of shock, fear, and utter defeat, was a sight to behold. As the chaos subsided and the disgraced son was led away, Maria and Timothy stood together, the silent heroes of a war no one else had seen. She looked at him, her heart swelling with a profound emotional gratitude. He wasn't just her protector. He wasn't just the man who had shown her the meaning of true loyalty and trust. In that moment, she realized her loyal bodyguard was her true partner, her confidant, her Harith heart of her no-safe empire, and the missing piece of her own love story. And there you have it. A story that reminds us that the strongest empires aren't built on stone and steel, but on loyalty, trust, and the courage to believe in someone when the rest of the world tells you not to. We witnessed a silent bodyguard become a hero, a powerful CEO reclaim her throne, and a calculated betrayal get exposed in the most satisfying way possible. From the quiet tension of a secret investigation to the explosive final plot twist in the boardroom, we've been on quite an emotional journey together. This was more than a corporate drama, it was a heart-aching love story that grew in the most unexpected of circumstances. It was a testament to the fact that true partnership isn't about shared success, but about having someone in your corner during the darkest of times. Timothy and Maria's story is a powerful reminder to look past the surface, to trust our instincts, and to recognize that the greatest acts of love are often the ones performed in silence, with no expectation of reward. But now I want to hear from you. What part of the story impacted you the most? Did you suspect the son's deception from the start, or did the final reveal catch you by surprise? Let me know in the comments below if you were expecting a different ending, or if you loved the way justice and love triumphed. Your insights are what make this community so special. If you enjoyed watching this story unfold as much as I enjoyed telling it, please show your support by hitting that like button. Make sure you follow the channel so you don't miss out on our next deep dive. And check out some of our older videos for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And finally, if this story of loyalty and revenge resonated with you, share it with a friend who you think will be touched by it too. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.